All right, so we are here filming in the 2024 Silverado EV RST. Initial driving impressions, Nick, how is it?
Big, very tall, very heavy, but very uh, surprisingly nimble, and got a lot of power.
Yeah, ton of power to the point of, you know, throwing you back in your seat power, making your stomach queasy power. This is a first edition Silverado EV. So your initial driving impressions, you've been driving this for a few days. Can you tell me a little bit about what you think about this car so far?
Lots of options, really comfortable. You sit up really high, good sight lines, a little bit of a blind spot, but other than that, it's a fairly good driving feel. This version has a lot of different options for how you want the driving. So if you want a stiff steering, you want loose steering, there's 3 different modes for that, and you can mix and match the steering, the suspension, and all that really easily to really tailor to what kind of driving you want to do.
Right.
There's plenty of power, so if you want to do a sport mode and want to increase the horsepower, you can really have that pretty firm acceleration feel to it. If you want to have it fairly loose, you have that option as well. Lots of options.
We have a ton of options in the EV space now.
Yep.
You're seeing, pretty much every OEM coming out with multiple EVs at this point. So you got a ton of options, prices all over the place. Your thoughts on value for the money with this truck?
Well, if you're looking at MSRP, it's just a tough sell. You're not getting a brand boost because it's a Chevy, so you're not really hitting a certain market that is typically at $100,000 level, and it's just a tough sell in any sort of volume. There's a lot of truck here. It's a great machine, and I can't say you're lacking in value in terms of what you're getting. You're getting a lot for an EV.
Yeah.
But it's just a tough ask for a $100,000 truck.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest concern, $100,000, you can pretty much buy anything at that price point. Anything can be on your bucket list of shopping. Super nice ICE and hybrid options, a lot of different EV options. But if we're talking just EVs, Nick, I mean, what is this up against from your point of view? What are the competitors?
Well, you've got some of the obvious trucks. You've got Cybertruck, you've got F-150 Lightning, and those don't hit the range. The range is a game changer, but they're at a lower price point generally, particularly the Lightning.
Right.
So for that EV buyer that doesn't need the huge range, you're looking at $30,000, $40,000 less.
Yeah.
And that's a huge ask to ask somebody to spend this much money.
Pretty familiar interior. You're seeing this design language of the 2 digital screens on most of the new Chevy products, the Blazer, the Equinox, etc. What do you think of the functionality of this screen so far?
Really big, really accessible. You can see everything's really at the the touch of your fingers. It really aligns with the other Chevys you've driven. So if you're familiar with one, you're kind of familiar with both.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit of familiarity because there's just a lot of options that you can scroll through. But once you get the hang of it, where it's at, it's pretty good. Lots of information right at your fingertips right in front of you. You can kind of see your power output, your regen, your battery level. Everything you really need is really right and very accessible without having to do a lot of screens. If you contrast that with a Tesla or something different, it's not really right in front of you. But with this, big screen, very accessible, and fairly easy to use once you get familiar with it.
I must say, really impressed with the power for such a big and heavy vehicle. You can give this thing the boot. Wow, yeah. I mean, for something this big and this heavy to move like this, that's impressive.
You really don't even notice. You get up to speed, and you really don't even notice how fast you're going. It's that comfortable, that big. Not a lot of interior noise, too.
Yeah, yeah. The sound deadening in this car, pretty good. Cruising along at 70 miles an hour, and one of the takes on a lot of EVs is that because you have the lack of noise coming from a combustion engine, you tend to hear everything else, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's really the case on this car. The tires are quiet, the ride is quiet. Not a lot of wind noise coming from the window sills or the windows. So, yeah, overall, very impressed by the ride.
The build quality interior seems pretty good. Not a lot of creaks, not a lot of weird noises. What's the comfort level like for you as a passenger?
Yeah, I mean, ton of room. I mean, that was one of the first things I noticed in this car is just it's a absolutely massive interior. If you like a full-size pickup or a full-size SUV, I mean, this has to be one of the largest interiors of any new vehicle for sale right now. All right, another really cool thing, I love the full glass roof, right? You see that as an option on some cars like the Mach-E, standard on most of the Tesla products at this point, I think. But very cool feature, the glass roof. I love, especially in a place like Michigan where we're cloudy and gray all winter long, it's nice to have that daylight. And certainly you hear everyone talking about the range of this pickup, right? I mean, 450 miles estimated range. That is near the top of the pack when it comes to range on an EV. And for something this big to get that kind of range, very impressive.
You really just can't find that anywhere.
All right, so my first driving impressions on the Silverado EV. So one area where we differ is I know you like the one pedal driving. I do not like the one pedal driving. I almost always turn that off immediately, and I realize the benefit of the tech, but it's just uncomfortable for me.
I think that's one of the beauties of having it being optional.
Right.
In a Tesla, it's not really optional, and
I do like
have
that.
to get used to it. And if you're a bad one pedal driver, frankly, you can make everybody in your car sick. So I think that's a major plus that you have the option there.
All right, so the other, we're talking about value, other options in this segment at the price point. I can't help but think about this is priced right on top of the Sierra EV.
Yeah.
It's also priced right on top of the Hummer EV, both the truck and the SUV. And then you've got Escalade IQ right around the corner.
Yeah.
Let's talk those options because a lot of good options there. They are all kind of stacked on top of each other, and they're all pretty much available at the same time. We both like Hummer.
We do.
Awesome car. One of the craziest new vehicles on the road today. This versus a Hummer. Both of us have spent time in the Hummer EV. Your impressions comparing those two?
I think this is more practical. You just see a huge addition in range with this vehicle. You lose nothing in terms of practicality and usability.
Yeah.
But the Hummer just has something about it just being over the top and everything, just making it a fascinating machine to operate because it's so big, it's so mushy, and it with so much power.
Yeah, it has a true wow factor, right?
This is just an impressive machine, but more what you're used to.
Versus some of the other competitors in the segment, F-150 Lightning, obviously you have to talk about that truck. I actually think this truck is in some ways like the Lightning in that GM did a good job making this look like a truck.
Yep.
It doesn't look too funky or unique or too EV-esque. It looks like a badass big pickup truck. It's got presence on the road. But just okay, so let's just talk design versus F-150 Lightning. This or F-150?
I think this has a lot more panache to it.
Yeah.
I think F-150 Lightning is pretty boring, and to a certain extent, it brings EVs mainstream. But when you're talking the price points they're pointing to, and probably the EV buyers that are going to be interested, I think this stands out a little bit better.
Yeah.
The LED front lights.
Yeah.
And it just it makes it feel a little bit more special.
Yeah. Well, and Lightning's interesting because overall, pretty good truck, right? For Ford's first take at a electric pickup truck, actually very impressive. Like a lot of companies out of the gate, right? They were super proud of the pricing. They commanded those prices initially, and that has since tapered off dramatically. Those, 1-2 years later, now they're selling for in the 50,000s when they were going for 100,000+ during COVID. So times have definitely changed, and you mentioned it earlier, but I think that's the challenge for this truck.
Okay, so if you're setting aside price, you've driven most of the trucks out there. You've driven Lightning, you've driven Silverado, Hummer.
Yep.
Setting aside price, you get a free lease for a year, and of any of those choices. After driving today, what are you picking?
I think I'm going Hummer. I think I'm still going Hummer. Design is big for me. I think the Hummer, they just nailed the design. It's unmistakably Hummer. There is nothing else on the road that looks quite like it. This versus R1S for you.
For my use case, R1S. That's just, for me, it's just the usable space. A truck just doesn't fit. This is going to be my family car. So I just don't have a big use for a big trunk bed where there's so much. This is a giant car, but so much of that space is in the truck bed that I just don't have a use for.
Yeah.
I really love the idea of a 3-row big EV that I can pile my family, I can pile a bunch of stuff in, and it's all covered.
We talk about this often, right? But in a couple of years, when you can pretty much get any new EV that's out today, 2 years from now, for let's just call it 50 grand, there is going to be a ton of great options to choose from.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see a couple of years from now how these vehicles retain value, right? The EV segment seems to be very challenged on retaining value right now. Tesla's probably the worst offender at this point.
Yeah.
But all the others are not much further behind it. Rivians seem to be doing okay. Hummers seem to be doing okay. But I do worry about, if they produce a ton of these, and again, the market just continues to correct. It's going to be challenging to see what the values on these cars look like.
Yeah. And there's good reason for this car to have the price that it does. Four-wheel steering, huge horsepower, massive battery and massive range, just really capable, giant wheels, looks great. There's a justification here for the price, but is there a customer base out there that's big enough that would be willing to pony that up? And it's just such a soft market for EVs now. I don't know that there is, but you can make the justification for the price point that it's at, because there is a lot here, and this is a very capable vehicle.
You can tell this is kind of the best of what they have to offer from the GM brand.
The opposite of a compliance car.
Right. Yeah, there's no compliance in here. They could have very easily made this car, go 0 to 60 in, a totally reasonable time frame, 6-7 seconds. But instead, it's like, it's a rocket ship.